My cousin told my parents I had a secret love child. He said, "You need to know the truth." I exposed his fake messages and destroyed his reputation in front of the entire family. This all started because my cousin Garrison couldn't keep his nose out of my business. He's always been the kind of guy who thrives on drama and attention, but I never imagined he'd stoop so low. I mean, we all have that one relative who loves to stir the pot, but Garrison didn't just stir it, he lit the whole damn thing on fire. Let me set the stage. My parents, Colleen and Harold, are the type of people who care deeply about appearances. They're not bad people, but they're traditional, rigid, and deeply religious. They live in Peoria, Illinois, a small, tight-knit community where gossip spreads faster than wildfire. Growing up, they were strict, especially with me. My choices were always under a microscope: what I wore, who I hung out with, what I did with my life. They had this image of the perfect son, and I was not it. I moved out as soon as I could. After high school, I headed to Chicago to pursue a career in graphic design, which they didn't exactly approve of. But I've always been honest with them about my life, at least as honest as you can be with parents like mine. I wasn't hiding anything. That's why what happened next completely blindsided me. It all went down at the family reunion last summer. My Aunt Meredith hosts it every year at her lake house in Michigan. It's usually a low-key affair: food, games, kids running around, the usual. I wasn't even going to go this year, but my mom guilt-tripped me into it. "It's important to stay connected with family," she said. If I'd known what Garrison had planned, would have stayed home. Garrison was there, of course. He's my cousin on my dad's side. The guy's a walking cliché, overconfident, self-absorbed, always bragging about his success in life. He works in sales, but nobody really knows what he sells or how he makes his money. He has this way of making everything about himself, and he thrives on stirring up drama just to watch the fallout. I can't say I've ever liked him, but I've always tried to keep the peace for the sake of the family. From the moment I arrived, I could tell Garrison was up to something. He kept giving me these smug little smiles and whispering to people. At first, I thought I was just being paranoid, but then he started throwing me these cryptic comments like, "Anything you want to share with the family, Dax?" I asked him what he meant, but he just smirked and said, "Oh, you'll see." That night, after dinner, everyone gathered around the fire pit. It was one of those picture-perfect moments: the lake in the background, the stars overhead, the crackling fire. Garrison chose that moment to drop his bombshell. He stood up, cleared his throat, and said, "I think it's time the family knows the truth about Dax." My stomach dropped. I had no idea what he was about to say, but the look on his face told me it wasn't good. "Dax has been hiding something from all of us," he announced, looking straight at my parents. "Something big." My mom looked worried. My dad frowned. I could feel everyone's eyes on me. "What the hell are you talking about, Garrison?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He pulled out his phone and waved it around like it was a golden ticket. "I didn't want to be the one to tell you, but you deserve to know the truth. Dax has a secret love child." The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to go off. My mom gasped. My dad looked like he'd been punched in the gut. My Aunt Meredith put her hand over her mouth. I just stared at Garrison, stunned. "Are you out of your mind?" I said. "That's not true." "Oh, it's true," he said, smirking. "And I have the proof." He opened a folder on his phone and started scrolling through screenshots. "These are text messages between Dax and a woman named Ruby," he said, holding the phone up for everyone to see. In these messages, Dax admits to having a child and begs Ruby to keep it a secret. He started reading the messages aloud, his voice dripping with fake concern. "I can't let my parents find out," he read. "They'd disown me." It was complete nonsense. I'd never even heard of this Ruby person, let alone had a child with her. But Garrison wasn't done. He pulled up a blurry photo of a baby and claimed it was mine. "That's enough," I said, standing up. "This is ridiculous. None of this is true." But my parents weren't listening to me. My mom was crying. My dad was staring at me with this look of disappointment that cut me to the core. They wanted to believe me, but Garrison's evidence was too convincing. "Why would Garrison lie about something like this?" my mom said, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know," I shouted. "But I swear, this isn't true." Garrison just stood there, smirking like he'd won. He thought he had me cornered. But what he didn't know was that I wasn't about to let him get away with this. "Let me see those messages," I said, holding out my hand. He hesitated, but eventually handed me his phone. As I scrolled through the screenshots, it didn't take long to figure out they were fake. The timestamps didn't match up. The messages were full of typos I'd never make. And some of the phrases sounded oddly formal, like they'd been copied and pasted from somewhere else. I turned to my cousin Ella, who's a tech whiz. "Can you check these out?" I asked, handing her the phone. Ella nodded and got to work. Within minutes, she found the smoking gun. The messages had been created using a fake text generator. Garrison hadn't even bothered to cover his tracks. Are you kidding me? I said, holding up the phone. These messages are fake. Garrison made them up. The air around the fire pit shifted. My mom stopped crying. My dad's face turned red, not from anger at me, but at Garrison. Ella passed the phone around, showing everyone how the messages had been faked. Garrison's smug smile disappeared. Care to explain yourself? My dad said, his voice low and dangerous. Garrison stammered, I was just trying to protect the family. I thought Dax was hiding something. Protect the family? I said, my voice rising. You just tried to ruin my life with a bunch of lies. Why? Because you can't stand that I'm not a screw-up like you? He opened his mouth to argue, but before he could say anything, my Aunt Meredith cut him off. That's enough, she said, her voice sharp. You've embarrassed yourself and this entire family. The silence was deafening. Garrison looked around, realizing he had no allies left. I could see the panic in his eyes, but it was too late. The damage was done, to him. The silence around the fire pit was almost deafening. Garrison looked like a trapped animal, his eyes darting around as if someone might step in and rescue him. But no one said a word. My dad stood up slowly, his face tight with anger. He wasn't a man who raised his voice often, but when he did, everyone listened. Garrison, he said, his tone ice cold. You're going to explain yourself right now. Garrison stammered, trying to backpedal. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he said. I just thought Dax was hiding something, and I wanted to bring it to light. That's a load of crap, and you know it, I snapped. You didn't think anything. You made this up because you wanted to humiliate me. My dad nodded. He's right. You weren't trying to protect anyone, Garrison. You were trying to tear him down. And for what? What did you think you'd gain from this? Garrison couldn't answer. He looked down at his feet, mumbling something about how he was just trying to do the right thing. My dad shook his head in disgust. Then my mom stood up. Now, my mom isn't the type to get angry. She cries, she frets, but she rarely ever raises her voice. But that night, she looked at Garrison with a fierceness I'd never seen before. You humiliated my son, she said, her voice trembling. You made me think he betrayed us. Do you have any idea what you've done to this family tonight? I'm sorry, Garrison muttered, but no one was buying it. Sorry isn't good enough, I said, stepping closer to him. You went out of your way to destroy my reputation with a bunch of lies. Do you think you can just walk away from this like nothing happened? No. You're going to face the consequences. I wasn't about to let Garrison get away with what he'd done, and I made sure the entire family knew the full extent of his lies. I grabbed Ella's phone, which now had screenshots of the fake text generator Garrison had used, and started passing it around. Take a good look at this, I said to everyone. This is the site Garrison used to create those fake messages. He thought he could fool all of you, but he didn't even cover his tracks. One by one, my relatives looked at the evidence. Some of them gasped. Others shook their heads in disbelief. My Aunt Meredith looked furious, and my uncle, Garrison's dad, just sat there with his head in his hands. Nobody spoke up in Garrison's defense. How could they? The proof was undeniable. Then Ella dropped the final nail in his coffin. And just so everyone knows, she said, holding up her own phone, this baby photo Garrison used? It's from a public Instagram account. He didn't even try to make it look legit. She passed her phone around, showing everyone the original photo of a random baby that Garrison had stolen from the internet. At that point, Garrison's lies were completely unraveled. There was no coming back from this. Once the full truth was out, Garrison's reputation crumbled faster than a sandcastle in a storm. My dad stood up and addressed the entire family. From this moment on, he said, his voice steady and firm, I don't want to hear another word about this nonsense. Dax did nothing wrong, and Garrison is entirely to blame for this mess. If anyone has a problem with that, you can leave. Nobody said a word. Even Garrison's own parents didn't try to defend him. My Aunt Meredith looked at Garrison and said, I think you should leave. Now. Garrison tried to protest. I just made a mistake. No, she snapped. A mistake is forgetting someone's name or burning the rolls at dinner. What you did was malicious. You don't deserve to sit here with the rest of us after what you've done. With that, Garrison slunk away, his face red and his shoulders slumped. He didn't even try to argue. He just grabbed his things and left. I watched him drive off into the night, and for the first time in years, I felt like justice had been served. But I wasn't done yet. Garrison needed to face real consequences for what he'd done, not just a scolding from the family. So, I decided to hit him where it hurt the most, his so-called career. The next day, I called Ella and asked for her help. Together, we compiled all the evidence of Garrison's lies, the fake messages, the stolen baby photo, everything. Then we started digging into his social media accounts and professional profiles. It didn't take long to find out that his successful sales consultant job was just as fake as his messages. He was involved in a shady multi-level marketing scheme, and his online presence was full of exaggerated claims and outright lies. We sent everything to his MLM company, including screenshots of the fake texts and proof that he'd been stealing photos from other people's accounts. Within a week, Garrison was dropped from the company. Apparently, they didn't want to be associated with someone who had a reputation for being a liar and a fraud. But that wasn't all. I also made sure the rest of our extended family knew what kind of person Garrison really was. I sent out a group email with all the evidence, explaining exactly what had happened at the reunion. I didn't hold back. By the time I was done, everyone knew that Garrison had not only lied about me but also tried to manipulate the entire family for his own gain. The fallout was brutal, for Garrison, at least. He became a pariah in the family. Nobody invited him to gatherings anymore. His own parents barely spoke to him. Word spread around Peoria about what he'd done, and his already shaky reputation took a nosedive. He went from being the guy who thought he was better than everyone else to being the guy nobody wanted to be around. As for me, I came out of this mess stronger than ever. My parents apologized over and over for doubting me, and I could tell they truly meant it. For the first time, they stopped treating me like some wayward child who needed to be fixed and started seeing me for who I really am. In the end, Garrison's lies didn't destroy me, they destroyed him. And honestly, I couldn't have asked for a more fitting revenge.